This video is sponsored by my course, the Unreal Engine C++ Survival course. Using my knowledge from working in the industry, we start from the basics and work our way up until we've created an online survival game with C++. We create vehicles, clothing, weapons, Steam matchmaking, and much more. Get lifetime access for $25 using the link in the description. Alright, game playability system, let's talk about it. Game playability system is used extensively in Fortnite and it is a really powerful system that has been in the engine for years. No one knew how it worked and now everyone's using it, and for good reason. It's really, really powerful. Let me try to explain what it does in like 2 minutes. So I'm going to jump into this project here. I'll leave this in the description for anyone that wants to try it out. You can see down at the bottom of the screen here, I've got 3 bars, and the bars are displaying something called attributes. So that's the first part of the system, is attributes. Attributes can be health, mana, stamina, ammo, gold, literally anything that your game needs can be like an attribute, right? The next part of the system is effects, and effects modify attributes. When I hit someone, I might apply a damage effect to them that would lower their health attribute. In fact, check it out. When I sprint, the sprint ability uses an effect to drain my stamina. Right, so we've got attributes, we've got effects. The next part of the system is abilities, and the word ability can be a little bit confusing because literally anything can be an ability. Sprinting in this game is an ability. There's this cool meteor ability we can do. Shooting, that's an ability in this project, so it's really up to you what you want to be an ability. But ability is a kind of this high-level way of just managing a bit of logic, right? Here's this meteor. You can see there's a lot of different parts to it, right? There's getting into the screen, my camera changes, I spawn the meteor, I hit someone, it deals damage. There's a lot of moving parts to that. The great thing about gas is that it puts that entire process in one place. So in a traditional game, this meteor ability would be like setting timers, spawning all these different actors. It would be so complicated, I don't know, maybe even hundreds of lines of code. In this project with gas, the meteor ability, the entire thing, is contained inside of one handy, nifty little blueprint. Here it is here. And this is everything. This is the entire meteor ability, right? We change the location of the camera. We wait for you to select where you want to drop the meteor. We commit, we use some mana up or whatever the cost is. We wait for someone to get hit and then we deal some damage to them and stuff like that. So the ability system is really good at making you put abilities, these big chunks of logic, into one neat little package. It makes your code quite easy to manage as well. And there's also this concept of abilities are not linear. Like if you have a look at this ability here, there's a lot of different things that can happen during the process. Like you can see here, wait until player chooses a location to drop the meteor. Well, maybe I'll choose a location to drop the meteor, but I can also cancel the ability. So the ability system recognizes that there are lots of different outcomes from activating an ability. And also it doesn't happen instantly. It can happen in multiple different steps. And you'll notice these nodes with the little clock in the top. These appear over and over and over again. These are called async blueprint tasks. And they're basically these nodes that they don't happen straight away, right? It'll sit on this node for quite a while. And then when I finally choose where I want to drop the meteor, then it's going to call this blueprint pin here. So we use these all the time in abilities because abilities by their very nature are not instantaneous. There's lots of different steps, lots of different outcomes. So that's the 3 big parts. Attributes, effects get modified by attributes, and then abilities. And there's some other things that we'll get into, but those are the big ones. And today we're going to be making a project pretty simple. We're going to create a character, we're going to give him some attributes like health, attack power, and then we're going to implement a punch ability which will deal damage to someone else. Okay, so I'm going to leave a link to the starter project. Just download this, make sure you have Unreal Engine 4.25, and then once you've unzipped it, just click on Generate Project Files, And once that's done, just open up this Visual Studio solution and then we can begin. Once you've closed the editor, open up your gas.u project file and just ensure that you have game playabilities enabled down the bottom there. And after you've done that, you'll want to go to gas.build.ces, and underneath public dependency module names, we're just going to add some private dependency modules. Gameplay abilities depends on the gameplay tags and gameplay tasks and stuff, so we just need to add them down here. So you want to put private dependency module names, and we're going to include these 3 modules in the project. Now we're going to hit local Windows debugger, and we're going to add a whole bunch of classes. Alright, so in the project, go to C++ classes. We're going to add a new C++ class, and you'll want to search for Ability System Component. This is basically how we talk to the ability system. Anything can have an ability system component. So if you wanted your weapon to have its own set of attributes and effects and whatever, you could give it an ability system component. You could give yourself one. You could give AI people one if AI need to have abilities as well. So it's fully up to you. So I'm calling mine gas ability system component, and I'd recommend calling your stuff the same as mine. And then click on create class. The next thing that we need is an attribute set, because we're going to add health and stamina and all that stuff. So add another C++ class and just search for attribute set. Click on that. And we'll just call as gas attribute set. And finally, we're going to add our own custom ability class, because we want to add a little bit of customization. So we're going to do gameplay ability, and just find gameplay ability, click on that one, and we'll just call this gas gameplay ability. And then create that class too, and now we're done. Okay, so the first thing that we need to use gas, there's a little bit of setup, a little bit of boilerplate, and it's kind of unavoidable. So the first thing we need is our ability inputs. So abilities are usually bound to input. I might bound the left mouse button to punch. That's my punch ability. I might bind the left shift to the sprint ability, and so on. So we're going to add a enum class, and we'll call it gas ability input ID. The first one should usually be none, and then there's a confirm and cancel one that are part of the system. And then we're adding our own punch one here at the end. So define that, and then we can move on. Okay, so now it's time to add attributes like health, stamina, and attack power to the game. So you do that inside of an attribute set. You can share attribute sets, so maybe there's a weapon attribute set that just the weapon needs. Maybe I need mana, but AI don't, so I give myself the mana attribute set. You can do whatever you want. It's quite common though to have all of your attributes just in one attribute set, because it makes things a bit more simple. So what we'll do is we'll add these nice little helper macros. These are from attribute-set.h. So if you go in here, you'll find them in there somewhere. But we're just adding those. Those kind of convenience. They add getters and setters and do some stuff for you. So worth adding those there. The next thing we'll do is add a constructor. We're then going to add a get lifetime replicated props, because all of the attributes are going to be replicated. When my health changes, I want other players in the game to know about that. So we need to replicate them. And we'll add our first attribute, which is going to be health. And there's quite a bit of boilerplate here, so don't be too alarmed. But basically what we're doing is we're defining a health attribute. We're using that handy macro to add some getters and setters and stuff instead of having to do that ourselves. And then we're adding an onRep function as well down there. So we've added health. Let's add stamina and attack power as well. So there's our health, there's our stamina, and there's our attack power. So those are the 3 attributes that we'll add. What you want to do now is create an implementation for all of those functions. So add your constructor, get lifetime replicated props, and then your health, stamina, and attack power. Gas requires that we tell it whenever an attribute changes. It's all part of the system. So just add the gameplay attribute rep notify inside of your onReps, and that's all you need to do. Inside of get lifetime replicated props, we just need to replicate them. We're using a condition that says always rep notify. Basically on reps will only call if the value changes, but we want it to just always change. So that's what we're doing there. You will need to add the net/Unreal network header to this file. And I think you need to add the ability system component as well. So add that, and that is how we define attributes. And we'll give the attributes to our player in a second, but the first thing is just getting them created. So depending on your game, some games might want to tie each ability to an input. Some games might activate abilities completely differently, but in our game, we're just going to map each ability to some input. So you click the left mouse button and it activates the punch ability. So what we'll do is inside of our gas gameplay ability, we're just going to add a ability input ID. That's the input that should activate this ability. So we'll create a constructor, and I think I'm just going to leave that constructor empty actually. Yep, we'll just leave that empty. And you will have to add the gas header file here as well. So I've got my character. How do I give him health, stamina, etc.? The first thing you want to do is add the public ability system interface. And you will also need to add the ability system interface header file. And we're also going to add gameplay effect types as well. I've already got a couple of components on this character, so all I need to do is add the ability system component along with all the other components. And I'll also add my attributes to the player, so I just put my attributes down here like that. Next up, you have to implement this function. It's called Getabilitysystem Component, and the ability system uses this function, so you have to implement it. And all you have to do is just give it the ability system component that you added. Next up, just come into the constructor here and add a ability system component. Make sure that we set it as replicated. And then there are a couple of replication modes. Minimal, mixed, and full. Minimal will replicate not much stuff to other players. Mixed will replicate gameplay effect information. And full will replicate absolutely everything. Generally, you want to use either minimal or mixed if you're making an online game. And if you're making a single player game, then you can get away with just using the full replication mode. So that's how you add the ability system. And then we're going to add our attributes by just creating a default subobject and then just put our attributes in. And now our player has attributes. The next question is, how do we give the player default values? Because it's going to have 0 health, 0 stamina. We want some default value like 100 health as a default. So how do we set that up? The answer is to make a Initialize Attributes function. And remember how I said at the start of the video that attributes are modified by effects. This is no different for the default attributes that we give the player. Defaults being like 100 health, 100 stamina, whatever. We need a gameplay effect to actually set the default values. So what we'll do is we'll come down here and we'll add this gameplay effect. This is going to be our default attribute effect. It's going to set all the default values for our attributes. So we'll right click on Initialize Attributes, create an implementation of it. Okay, so we're about to learn how to apply effects to a character or an ability system component. And this is really important. This is a really big part of the system. How do we change someone's attributes? When I shoot someone, how do I give them a damage effect that's going to lower their health attribute? And so how you do that is through the ability system component. What we're going to do inside of Initialize Attributes is we're going to make something called a context handle. A context handle is just some information about the context in which we're applying the effect. For example, if I shoot someone, the context is I'm the instigator of that shot and I'm damaging him. So there's a bit of context around, you know, how you apply the effect. The next thing you need to make is a effect spec, and we do that. The reason you make a spec is because effects can have different levels and lots of different things like that. So we're going to use the default effect at level 1. We're not going to be bothering with levels in this video. We'll just add 1 here, and then we'll give it the context. finally, if our spec handle is valid, we are going to apply the default values to your player using the effect. The way we do that is we take your ability system component and we apply the gameplay effect to self. There's another one called to target, which would be used if we are like shooting someone or something like that. But in this case, we're just applying the default values to ourself. I also want to give the character the punch ability off the bat, and in Gas you actually have to give the ability to the person. Because I want the player to be able to punch by default, I'm going to make a give abilities function that will give the player some default abilities. So we're going to add an array of Gas gameplay abilities, and these are the default abilities to give to the player, and we're just going to put punch in there. So we'll give that, and we're going to create an implementation, and I'll show you how to give abilities. The server should always give abilities, so the first thing we do is we're going to check that we are the server by using has authority, and then we're going to say, is our ability system component valid? The next thing we're going to do is just loop over those default abilities, and to give them to the player, what you want to do is take your ability system component and you just call this function called giveAbility. You can see here's the ability spec. You can define a level for the ability, because abilities again can have levels. As your character levels up, abilities can get more powerful, but we're not going to be touching that today. And then you also need to give it the input ID, and we'll be setting that to the punch input in a little bit. Okay, so there's a little bit more boilerplate code, so we need to add a possessed by and an onRep player state, and I'll tell you why we're adding these. So possessed by is a function that gets called on the server, and onRep player state is a function that gets called on the client. You need to initialize the ability system on both the client and server. So these two functions provide a good place to do that. So we're going to add these two functions. And always remember to call the super function, because that can make bad stuff happen if you don't. So super possessed by new controller. So what you need to do is you need to tell the ability system who the owner of the ability component is. So what you do is you do init ability actor info, and you need to tell it who owns the ability system, and then also who's the avatar. And you can see here the owner owns the component, and the avatar is the actual physical thing you can see in the world. So maybe my controller owns the ability system component, but my character is the avatar. It's the thing you can actually see in the world. In my case, I want the character to be both the owner and the avatar, so I'm just going to do this and this. And then we're going to initialize all my attributes to the default values, and we also want to give the punch ability to the player, so we're going to do that as well. And let's just say server gas init. The client is a little bit different, so it is still going to init the actor info and initialize the attributes, but only the server should give the abilities, so the client doesn't need to do that. One thing the client does need to do is bind the input to the abilities. That doesn't just happen by default, you actually need to set that up to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, if we have a valid ability system component and input component, the first thing we'll do is make some binds. So here it is here. So if gameplay ability input binds, confirm, cancel, we give it the name of our input enum, and then a bit of magic will happen behind the scenes where it'll look through and match our enum up to inputs later on. And then we give it the confirm and the cancel values of our enum there. So yeah, once you've done that, you just give the ability system the binds. Oh, and you also need to give it your input component. And there you have it. I'm also going to copy this, and inside of setup player input component, I'm going to come down to the bottom here, and I'm just going to paste it in there as well. And this is because sometimes the ability system will be valid, but the input won't be valid, and one function will get called before the other. And so by putting it in both functions, we're guaranteed that the ability activation will get bound properly. At the top of gascharacter.cpp, you'll just want to add these 4 header files here. This is just our custom stuff, and I'm not sure if we needed that one, but add that anyway just to be safe. Okay, finally we can start messing around with abilities and setting stuff up. Sorry, that's really boring, just boilerplate code. And in fact, if you make any project and you put gas in it, you'll basically write that code almost every time. So, but yeah, at this point, if you've done everything correctly, you should be able to click on Local Windows Debugger. And now we can jump into the editor, which is where we will make abilities and effects and things like that. Okay, so it's time to add our first ability. What we're going to do is add a new folder, and I'll call it abilities. And then inside of there, before we do that, let's make our default effect to set all of our attributes to default values. So to do this, make a new blueprint class and then search for gameplay effect. Click on that. And then you'll want to type in GE for gameplay effect, and then we'll say character defaults. Open that up, and it's going to look a bit intimidating at first, but I'll go through the things here. So the first thing is the modifiers. We actually want to just set modifiers. So we're setting the default values. If we click the drop down, notice we have health, stamina, and attack power. So we're going to set the health. We're going to override it to be 100 by default. We're going to set the stamina to be, I'll just do 100 for that one as well. And then by default, I'll say that when you attack someone, you actually deal, let's just say 20 damage when you attack someone. So now we've actually initialized our attributes. So what we need to do is tell the character to use this gameplay effect on itself, and that'll set the default values. So what we'll do is we'll open up the character here, third person character, and in the class defaults you can see default attribute effect, and just click on character defaults. Next up, let's just make the punch ability while we're at it. So blueprint class, we're going to search for gas gameplay ability, and then GA punch. So that's our ability there. And so we want it to be bound to the punch input. So when I click the left mouse button, we want to punch. So we'll go to project settings. We'll go to input, action mappings, and I'm going to add one here. I'll just type in punch and then left mouse button. And gas, gameplay ability system, is going to automatically find this punch, and then it's going to map it to that ability. So if I open up GA punch, there we go. We won't make the ability just yet because I want to sort of show a few things first. Okay, so to check if the ability system's working, go ahead and play in the game and then open the console with the tilde key, and then you want to type show debug ability system. And so what this will show you is on the left hand side there you should see health, stamina, and attack power, and you'll see that those values are now initialized. And now we can start sort of making abilities and doing different things. But let me show you how gameplay effects work. Let's show you how to actually apply these. Let's make it so that we hurt the character when he starts playing, and we'll bring his health down just to see if we can do it. So I'm going to make a blueprint here. We'll make a gameplay effect. I'm going to click on that, and I'll call this GE damage. So we're going to harm the player. And all we need to do is modify something. So we're going to add a modifier. We want to modify the health value, and we're going to add -20. So we want to bring the health down by 20. I'm going to compile and save. And it's actually quite easy to do. So we'll open up third person character. On begin play, we're going to drag in ability system component and apply gameplay effect to self. And the effect we want to do is damage. We want to damage ourselves and try it out. Again, I'm just going to put level 1. And don't worry about putting in an effect context because we don't really need one in this case. And when we hit play, I'll just run my command again. And you can see that it did hurt the player. You can see the player's health is now on 80. So now we're sort of understanding how to make attributes and how to modify them and stuff like that. So now I think it's time to move on to our first ability, which is going to be a punch ability. Okay, super quick animation thing we have to do. Go to Animations, NMBP, and then go to the anim graph and just type slot. And we have to do this so that we can play montages on the character. So we'll compile, save. Okay, so let's go into GA punch. So when you make an ability, you have a few different events. The main ones being activate ability and on end ability. So when this ability gets activated, we want to start by playing the punch montage. And when the punch montage gets to a certain point, maybe like there, then we check if you've hit the player, then we deal the damage. So there's a few different steps to the montage. So when you activate the punch ability, we're going to play a montage. And to get our player's skeletal mesh is actually super easy. Just type get actor info. Right click on this pin and split it, and then just plug the skeletal mesh in. And that's our player's skeletal mesh right there. So all the important things you'd ever want to access are right here in the ability for you to use. So we'll play the attack montage. And then when the montage completes, let's just end the ability. So let's make sure it actually plays the attack animation, and we'll try it out. One thing I forgot, by the way, go back into third person character, and under default abilities, we have to give the character the punch ability as one of the default ones, and then compile and save, and then let's try it out. There you go. So when I click the mouse button, the character does a little attack animation. But right now we're not checking if you hit someone, we're certainly not applying damage or anything like that. So that's the next step now. So because we want to check for the punch when the punch reaches a certain point, we need to use something called an anim notify. Anim notifiers are really simple, and I'll show you how they work in a sec, but let's just make it first. So blueprint class anim notify. Click on anim notify, and I'm going to call it an underscore. I guess I'll just call it punch. So we'll open up anim notify punch, go to functions, receive notify. So when the animation gets to a certain point, it'll fire the notify, then we can check if you punch someone, then we can deal damage. So that's how that's going to work. So what we'll do is we'll get the owner of the mesh. We will cast them to a third person character. We will then tell our character to do the punch. So let's open the character up. We'll add a new custom event here, and we'll call it handle punch. So our anim notify is going to tell the character to handle the punch. And then we'll just check this box here to say everything worked good. We'll then open up our mannequin animations attack. Okay, so when do we want to deal the damage? It's about there, right? When the hand strikes the enemy, then we want to deal some damage. So under the notifies area here, just right click and add a notify, and then add our punch notify. Okay, so when we punch someone, really all we want to do is we want to find an actor that was near our hand when we punched, and then we can deal the damage to that actor. So what we'll do is we'll use this handy little node called sphere overlap actors, and that'll give us all the actors within a given sphere. So let's give it the location. So we're going to take the mesh, and we want to get the location of our hand. To do that, we just do hand like that. We want to ignore ourselves because we don't want to be able to punch our own character. That doesn't really make any sense. So we want to do that, and then we only want to look for pawns, right? If we hit another player. So go ahead and click on pawn there, and third person character. There you go. So if we hit someone, so if there was someone, then what we want to do is we're going to use something called a gameplay event. The gameplay event being we hit something, right? That's the event. Because gameplay abilities use a system called gameplay events as well. They're pretty simple, and I'll show you how they work. So let's send a gameplay event to ourselves, and let's say that we hit something, right? So the actor that we're telling the gameplay event about is the instigator, the person throwing the punch. And we are going to make gameplay event data. I'm going to plug in the instigator here. The target is the person that we hit, so we're going to grab the person that we hit, plug them in, and then we're going to do ability target data from actor and plug that in. The target data is used when we apply the damage to the target, so we need to make some target data as well. Okay, at this point we can compile and save. Let's now go back into GA punch, and what we're going to do is after we play the montage of the punch, then we're going to wait for a gameplay event. So what I'll do here is I will drag out wait gameplay event, and let's go back to the character, and we need to tell it what event we're sending to it. We don't actually have any gameplay tags, so let's make a gameplay tag. We'll just call it weapon.hit. Right, the weapon hit something. Let's add that tag. And so the event that we're looking for is weapon.hit. So if any other event comes through, we don't care about it. We want to know if a weapon hit something. We'll only trigger it once because that only makes sense. We just want to apply the damage once. And then if we hit something, we want to apply the damage to them. So the way that we do this is we're going to take the event data, we're going to drag off from target data, and we're going to apply a gameplay effect to target. And we want to apply the damage to the target, the person that we hit. So there we go. That should be pretty much it. And I actually did something bad here. This happens straight away. We only want to do it when we receive the event. So make sure you drag off that pin, very important. And then if the montage finishes and we don't hit anything, then we can just end the ability, right? We don't care about that anymore. So we'll just connect that up like so. And it's always a good idea to clean things up as well. So I'm going to promote this to a variable. I'll just call this async task, something like that. And I'll show you how to clean this up at the end. It's usually a good idea if you're using these async ones, store them in a variable, and then we can clean them up when we're done. So under functions, just go to onEndAbility, take our async task, and if it's still running, if it's still valid, then we need to clean that up, otherwise it'll just sit around forever doing nothing. So all you need to do is just do end task, and that will clean it up. So the next thing to talk about is how do we make effects? Like when I get hit, how do I get the character to flinch up? Or when I shoot someone, how do I get blood to come out of them? That's called gameplay cues. That's how we do visuals in Playability. So the way that you want to do this is we'll start by going to the gameplay cue editor, and we will add a new gameplay tag, and they have to have gameplay cue at the start. It's very important. I'm just going to call this gameplay cue.tookDamage, and then we'll add that. Now that we have a tookDamage tag, we need to add a handler. So just click add new, and you can spawn an actor. We don't want to do that. We're just going to use the static notify. So we'll click on that, and then we just want to call it GC_tookDamage. So there's our new gameplay cue right there. Right click on a hit react and create a montage out of it, and we're going to call this m_hit react. And when the player gets hit, we want to play that montage. The way that you do that is go to functions, on execute, and all you want to do is cast the target to a third person character, and the target, the person that got hit, needs to play the animation. So what we'll do is we'll just play anim montage. And the montage to play is the hit react. So click on that, and then check that box there. And now inside of GE damage, to get it to play that visual cue that we added, you need to just go down to gameplay cues, add a gameplay cue, and then you want to add our tookDamage gameplay cue. like that. So compile, save, and let's try it out. I'm going to run up to my character here, I'm going to punch him, and you can see that he's playing the animation, he's taking the damage, everything seems to work pretty well. Except for my punch ability, which always seems to miss. But there you go, so that's how a gameplay queue works, and you can do a lot of stuff like spawn particles or, you know, I mean literally anything, pretty much whatever you want the effect to be, you can do it. So here's a really powerful thing, because attack power is an attribute, why don't we hook that up to our damage instead of just having a value of 20, right? And that way, we can add buffs and debuffs that make you do more or less damage, right? Now we're adding some power, some flexibility in there. You can see by default we're just taking 20 health away from the player. Let's click the drop down and click on attribute based. What that lets us do is instead of using a fixed value, we can actually select the attack power attribute, and we're going to type -1 as a coefficient so that it takes the health away instead of adding it. We don't want to give people health when we punch them, right? So -1, and so now whatever our attack power is how much damage we'll do. And so now we can add even more gameplay effects, like let's do this. Let's go to gameplay effect, and I'll add one, I'll call it GE attack debuff. And what I'll do is I'll modify your attack power. I'll divide it by 2, so I'll halve your attack power. So now we've just created our first debuff, right? Let me show you. So under character defaults, we do 20 attack damage, right? So when I punch someone, it'll deal 20 damage. But if I give myself the attack debuff, then I'll only deal 10 damage. The opposite could be true. You could buff the player's attack power. And so this sort of stuff is like really powerful, and you can really build some cool gameplay stuff out of this. Because this is a debuff as well, let's make it have a duration instead of being an instant effect. Go down to has duration, and then we'll just make this effect last for like 20 seconds, right? So now it's going to debuff your character for 20 seconds, and then it will remove this, right? So it's going to divide your attack power down to 10, but then after 20 seconds it'll go back to where it was. You can actually see this working in the game here. So I've spawned in, the debuff is applied, you can see my attack power is 10 and it just blipped back up to 20 because the duration was over, so it'll reverse itself now. Okay, so here we are attacking the other player. You can see their health went down to 90 because they have the debuff. You can actually see debuff shows up as well. And once the debuff wears off, just give it a second, there we go. So our attack power is now 20, and now it should take us down to 70 health when I hit him, and there you go. So there's the debuff working. And so that's pretty much it. We've really just scratched the surface. You can go so much deeper than this, and I encourage you to. I will link in the description GAS documentation. It's this crazy project that I showed you at the start. Really good, tons of source code, tons of writing up, and you could, I don't know, you could read it for weeks, and it's crazy. Like, the amount of detail is awesome. So I'll link that in the description. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll see you guys later. If you would like to help fund my private elevator, please feel free to subscribe or buy my course. It'd be really helpful. It's not a very good elevator. Oh, my legs are getting sore now. Don't know why. Oh!